Hello, BookTube family, and welcome back to my channel. For those of you that are new here, my name is Lou, and on this channel, we like to chat about and review fantasy and sci-fi books. So earlier this year, I read Ambessa Chosen of the Wolf as an arc that I got from Orbit Publishing. Ambessa is a character from the League of Legends, and if you don't play the video game, then you probably discovered her the same way that I did, which would be through the Netflix series Arcane. The book was written by C.L Clark. I read the book, I liked the book, but when I reviewed the book, quite a lot of you recommended that I read Ruination by Anthony Reynolds, which is another book based on the League of Legends. So that's exactly what I did. And now I'm ready to talk about how the two books compare. So, for some context, and for those who did not see my original review of Ambessa Chosen of the Wolf, I did not know about the video game prior to reading the book. I had only known of the show. And Ambessa is not depicted as the best character in the show. She is a villain that you hate to love. So, my expectations for the Ambessa book was to basically understand the character of Ambessa a bit more and possibly like her, not as a villain. Maybe feel a little sympathy for her. I don't know. And I can't really say that that's what happened. All in all, I did appreciate the book and I did like the plot. I liked a lot of the side characters that were introduced in the book that you do not see in the show. But my original rating of the book was somewhere in the middle. It wasn't until I did a mini deep dive into the lore behind League of Legends that I grew to like the book a bit more and then rated it higher. So, with that being said, the book on its own, not understanding anything further, is just okay. Sorry. Let me also say that this book should have really stepped it up for the fan base that this character has. Like I said, I did not play the video game, so my first impression of Ambessa was not great, but Ambessa is widely loved. And if I liked Ambessa as much as so many of you do, I think the book would have left me wanting. But I can't speak for you guys. You let me know. Nonetheless, I digress. That rhymed. And I just want to talk about the plot and how it compares to Ruination. So for Ambessa, Chosen of the Wolf, Ambessa loses her grandfather towards the beginning of the book, who is the head of the Medardic clan. Up to the point of his death, it was well understood that Ambessa was next in line to take his seat after her grandfather's passing. However, we have her cousin, whose name I cannot remember right now. I will insert it somewhere. And Tafik. Tafik. Tafik? Anyway, and he decides to make his own play for the throne. So essentially, the plot of Chosen of the Wolf is Ambessa trying to form allyships to win the throne and defeat her cousin. I did like how this book played with gender roles in having Ambessa in a commonly male character arc of the brazen soldier. In her family dynamic, Ambessa occupies the more masculine, brute role, where her husband is the more docile, nurturing partner. And I expressed in my original review how much I actually liked that. I liked how C.L. Clark and the original writers of League of Legends did not treat this detail about Ambessa as though it was something awkward or unique. It was just a fact about the character and moving on. I like that. I like that it was treated as something to be expected. She is part of the Medarda clan, and this is just who she is. I do feel that with characters like this, there is something in the dialogue that usually expresses that this is not the norm, and you will not find that in Chosen of the Wolf, and I thought that was pretty refreshing. However, with all that being said, the plot does sort of mellow out somewhere in the middle. We're sort of traveling from shore to shore, and I found that I was losing interest from time to time. I had kind of wished that a certain subplot regarding Mel was placed in a pressure cooker a little bit because it felt like it was approached very nonchalantly, kind of waiting for that to blow up and become a thing, and it never did. However, I do feel like some of the side characters, specifically Rel, sort of carried the weight and kind of kept this story from being complete. By the way that it ended, I was left with the impression that this was going to be a series. However, I'm not so sure of that now. If this is not the first book to a series, then I would rank this far lower as a standalone. However, if it is, then I think it is a great first book to what can potentially be a great series. Now, talking about Ruination, I can definitely understand why so many fans recommended that I read this book. I got the book from the library, but after reading it, I went out and bought my own copy for my home library. If that isn't saying something. What I obviously appreciated about Ruination was that you do not need to have played the video game nor have watched the show in order to understand the book at all. It would have been terrible otherwise because not a single character in Ruination is in the show Arcane. The plot of Ruination is something that I may struggle to streamline because it is slightly congested. We essentially have two stories being told parallel to each other, One is of Viego and Kallista, and the other is Erlok Greal. So on this hand, we have Viego, who is the king of Camivore, and his niece, Kallista, who is also his general. The start of their story is all peaches and cream until one day an assassin throws a poisonous blade, striking Isolde, which is Viego's wife, and sending her into a slow death. Desperate to save his wife, he sends Kallista to the Blessed Isles where she will bring back some holy water and bring Isolde back from the brink of death. And in this hand, we have Erlok Greal, which, by the way, is such a badass name for a not so great character. And this is a character who's got very unfortunate luck. He feels like he has been wronged. He has spent a very long time in the deepest, darkest dungeons of his city. So when the opportunity presents itself for him to finally get on top, he takes it. As these two stories inch closer and closer to their meeting point, I found the plot to get more and more out of pocket. I mean, jaw on the floor. I literally had to stop a few times to just be like, what? I feel like the plot of Ruination at its bare bones was definitely something been there, done that. But the way that the author decided to embellish around that story, yeah. Okay. Okay. It was definitely entertaining. I will give it that. In comparing the two, where Ambessa sort of lulled and mellowed out, Ruination reached and sort of did the opposite. One book could have benefited from adding more, where the other could have pulled back. But these are two different authors, and I recognize that you can't really expect one to do what the other does. If I'm just comparing the plot of the two books, I would definitely say that Ruination had a better plot because it was meatier and there was just more to stay engaged with. When it comes to characters, I will say that the characters of Chosen of the Wolf felt more believable to me. I felt like Anthony Ryan made the characters of Ruination very singular. Viego was manic, Kallista was indecisive, and Erlok Greal was vengeful. There were not a lot of layers to their characters, whereas Ambessa felt more complex. And I felt that way about all the characters of Chosen of the Wolf. They were not just one thing. But even with that being said, I can't say that I liked one set of characters more than the other. So when it comes to characters, I'll say both books are neck and neck. It'd be kind of hard to rate the setting, seeing as both books take place in the same world, but the way that each author depicts the world in their books, I will say that Anthony Reynolds did a better job at that. Keep in mind that C.L Clark did not get a lot of time with this world prior to writing the story, so that's really not on them. So final opinion, I will say that I did enjoy Ruination more than I enjoyed Ambessa Chosen of the Wolf, but both books were great. And if you're a fan of League of Legends or the Arcane series on Netflix, I don't think that you can go wrong with reading either of these. So those are my thoughts on the two books. If you stuck around for this long, do not forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. Happy reading!